We're going to start with a shocking report that just hit on what we know about Air India Flight 171, which horrifically crashed soon after takeoff just a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, June 12th, killing all but one of its 242 passengers and a reported 29 more on the ground. Think of that. So 241 passengers killed and a reported 29 more on the ground. That Boeing 787 Dreamliner, which took off from India and was headed to London's Gatwick Airport, seemed to run into problems almost immediately after takeoff. Stunning footage of the crash emerged online. Watch. It's horrific. For the listening audience, you just see a plane, the huge white plane that looks like it might kind of be trying to land, but this happened on takeoff, and then you just see the fireball. Incredibly, somehow one person survived, a 40-year-old British man, Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He just walked away. It was an incredible tape. You've probably seen it in the past 5 weeks. Just walked out of the fireball with only minor injuries. It's not clear in the moment the guy knew what had happened to him. He later told local media, "I was going to die, but when I opened my eyes, I realized I was alive. I pulled out the belt from under my seat and tried to escape, and then I managed to do it. I saw others and the air hostess in front of me who could not escape." Air India said those on board included 169 Indian nationals, 53 British nationals, 7 Portuguese, 1 Canadian. The youngest victim believed to be just 4 years old. And according to a new report in the Wall Street Journal, a black box recording indicates it was the captain who turned off switches that allow fuel to flow into the plane's engines right after the plane took flight. The journal's reporting cites people familiar with the U.S. officials' early assessment of the evidence in the crash. According to the journal, the first officer asked the captain why he turned off the switches, allowing the fuel to flow, and then you can hear the first officer panic. The captain apparently remains calm the entire time. India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, first revealed the exchange last week without specifying which pilot made each comment. That report says one pilot asked why the other turned off the switches, and the other denied doing so. But clearly, we now know that it was the second in command, but the one who was actually flying the plane, who said, "Why did you just turn off the fuel switches?" And then the captain calmly, this is obviously in a moment of dire situation for the plane, says he didn't do it. The report says the switches were moved 1 second apart and turned back on after they had turned off the fuel about 10 seconds later, but it was too late. The report also made no conclusions on whether the actions were deliberate, but it's easy to see why there are now reports hitting online from several aviation experts that there is no way this plane went down other than intentionally, that the captain of this plane deliberately brought down this flight. According to the journal, these preliminary findings have led some U.S. officials to believe that a criminal investigation must be opened. The AAIB issued a statement to the journal Thursday evening stating, "We urge both the public and the media to refrain from spreading premature narratives that risk undermining the integrity of the investigative process." Well, too bad, because these folks have been notoriously secretive in other investigations and in this one, and U.S. officials think a criminal investigation should be opened up. So we're not going to honor your request. They added that at this stage, it's too early to reach any definite conclusions. Okay, that's fine. But you don't stop speculation from a country that is not exactly known for its transparency on this kind of thing. And when you're talking about hundreds of people who may have just been mass murdered. Joining me now to react to all of this are Captain Steve Scheibener, Captain Steve on YouTube, Matthew Whiz Buckley, decorated U.S. Naval aviator and Top Gun graduate, and Patrick Smith, who's an airline pilot and air travel blogger at Ask the Pilot. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Wow, this is really stunning. This was a Wall Street Journal exclusive posting these new details, that it was the first officer questioning the captain's apparent actions. He expressed surprise and then panic. The captain remained calm, and the names of those who were flying. It was First Officer Clive Kunder. He was the pilot flying the plane, age 32. The captain, who remains calm and is under suspicion, was Sumit Sabharwal, a decades-long veteran. He is the one who flipped the switches, age 56. Wiz, let me start with you as our Top Gun grad and pilot. What do you make of this information?
Initially, Megyn, it's an absolute horror. It looks like a murder-suicide. As you alluded to, 787s just don't simply rotate, get airborne, and then settle back down. It looks like the captain, for whatever reason, wanted to check out that day. And sadly, Megyn, this isn't the first example of a pilot just wanting to take an aircraft down or take people with them. Egypt Air 990 or the Germanwings mishap, I believe, in 2015. Before I started flying for FedEx, there was a famous incident with a former Flying Tigers pilot who was going to jump in the jump seat and crash a plane into FedEx headquarters so he could get the insurance. And, he didn't want to look like a murder, so he wanted to crash the airplane. So, Megyn, all indications are that the captain selected the cutoff position on the fuel switches about 10 seconds for that first officer who was flying the airplane to be a little confused and look around going, hey, what are we doing here? And then to put them back on. And sadly, one of the motors spooled up a little bit above idle, and the other one was just trying to come online, but it was too late. Real quick, Megyn, I know pilots unions hate this, but we have like HD cameras on the other side of the moon. If we had some HD cameras in the cockpit instead of just a voice recorder, we'd know for absolute 100% certainty what happened. But for whatever reason, pilots unions don't like a camera looking over their shoulder. Maybe this will change that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like being a cop. You got other people's lives potentially in your hands, and unfortunately, you may have to sacrifice a bit of privacy, because this is not the first time this has happened. I mean, just researching for the show, we have seen pilot, death by suicide, but while committing mass murder before. I mean, that crash, that German pilot in 2015 was the most recent, but there were many prior to that. Yeah. Captain Steve, as you look at the video of that plane, it was taking off and then, of course, comes back down. And it almost looks like a gentle come down, but obviously it wasn't, and it wasn't supposed to be coming down. And you hear these facts as reported by the Journal. What conclusions do you reach?
Well, at first, when you see that video, it doesn't make any sense. I've never seen anything like that. An airplane that takes off, it looks like it achieves flight fine. And then seconds later, maybe 4 or 5 seconds later, you can see the nose kind of come over. Clearly, the wings are losing lift, and the airplane then begins to settle into the buildings off the end of the runway. And it does look like it's landing, but it's not. We clearly know that at this point. The only answer to that is it's a dual engine failure, and what caused the dual engine failure. And I think now with this Wall Street Journal confirmation, plus a preliminary report, which, they parsed their words a little bit. They said the fuel control switches transitioned from run to cutoff. They don't transition. Somebody has to place them there. It's a 3-step process. You have to grasp the switch, pull it up because it's spring-loaded, pull it down, and let it go. So that's only a human has to do that. And there's no known procedure that I know of at 200 feet off the ground on rotate where you would grab those switches and put them to cutoff. So either way, it was pilot error, whether it was intentional or unintentional. I think now the Wall Street Journal has kind of concluded that it's intentional, and that's no surprise.
And my understanding is, and maybe you can speak to this, Patrick, but my understanding is they put a little guard on the control panel, dashboard, I'm not exactly sure what the right term is, but where they keep those fuel switches, there's like a little guard so that a pilot can't inadvertently like knock it with his hip or his hand while he's reaching for something. So it really does look like, by all accounts, here's a picture we got from the Daily Mail. For the listening audience, it shows a little control panel, and you can see the tiny little fuel levers, but to the right and to the left of them is like a little metal guard that stands up. And my understanding is, Patrick, that's to prevent anything inadvertent from happening.
That's correct. And I think we need to start out by saying that there's a lot here that we just don't know. The report that came out the other day was very preliminary. We don't even have a CVR transcript yet. You've mentioned a few times what we know. Well, what about all the things we don't know? And as a result, I tend to be a little more reserved and conservative in my assessment of what happened.
What do you think happened?
I don't know. We don't know. And
well, you say you're more reserved. How are you more reserved? What conclusion are you reaching?
I don't necessarily buy the murder-suicide scenario. I'm not saying it didn't happen. There's evidence leaning in that direction strongly. But the dynamics of the crash don't quite make sense that way. So let me get this straight. You're going to shut the engines off at the moment of rotation and glide to a crash. There are so many unknowns in a scenario like that. There's no guarantee that the crash would be catastrophic, that everybody would be killed, that the person who did it would be killed. Just to the left of the impact area where the plane hit is a mostly open stretch without buildings or larger obstructions. If the plane had just been a little more to that side, the crash could have been at least partly survivable. It just doesn't seem like the way somebody would go about doing something like that. And you go back to Egypt Air and German wings and MH370, which almost certainly was a murder-suicide. It feels different, and there remains the distinct possibility, this is going to sound preposterous, that the fuel control switches were shut off accidentally, inadvertently, in a moment of absurd absent-mindedness. And while it sounds preposterous, that sort of thing has happened before.
For the listening audience, Patrick speaking, and both of our other pilots are shaking their heads no. But I like the disagreement. I appreciate the different opinions because we don't know what happened. Go ahead, Whiz.
I just couldn't disagree more, Megyn. If there was anything but what we've been talking about, they would go out of their way in this report to say it. If there was a hiccup in the electrical systems, Megyn, these jets
but
are
you wouldn't know that yet.
Smart.
You would not know any of that yet. This is so
absolutely
early on.
would know that. You would absolutely know that because these jets are tattletales.
Okay, let Whiz finish. Go ahead, Whiz.
Stuff.
No.
Those engines, they data link stuff directly to GE. The flight control computers, they know just about everything at this point. If there was any other straws they could be grasping at, they would throw that in the report right now. They did not. There was no electrical hiccups. There was no contaminated fuel. They put in this preliminary report, very preliminary stuff, obviously, what they believe. If there was any other thing on God's green earth, they probably would have written that down.
Go ahead, Captain Steve. You had your thoughts. I'll come back to you in 1 second, Patrick. I'll come right back to you. Let me get Captain Steve in.
Yeah, I agree that there's no way that those switches move from run to cutoff, and that's what they said in the preliminary report, that they didn't say place, they said transition to cutoff. Let's assume for a minute that there's some reason that there was an electronic glitch. You would have to believe that it happened on both switches 1 second apart, and if that were the case, they would be grounding every single Boeing airplane on the planet. They all have those same switches. There would be an investigation into what was wrong with those switches. None of that has come out of this. And so what's not being reported in the report or what's not taking place is just as important as what you do read in the report. I don't think Boeing or anybody else suspects that there's anything wrong with the 787 because there's not.
Correct.
And
Megyn,
I'll give you the floor in 1 second.
They release...
1 second, but I just want to say this. We also have the other piece of evidence, which is the co-pilot, the one who was actually flying the plane, believed the captain did it. 100% believed he did it. And then the captain denied it in some sort of calm manner, which was said to be his manner. And then we'll get to the reports about his mental state, which vary. Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898 and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.